This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Joining me now, John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. We got a lot to talk about this week, John. It was a busy week on politics. Let's begin first, the passing of Mark Lowry, our state treasurer, since you and I last talked. I think everybody has said nice things about him. He laid in state for a day or two, and now Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the governor, now provides some sort of replacement for him. This is a rare occurrence to see an elected official die in office like this, isn't it?
It taxes my long memory to recall another occasion, and it's especially poignant, sad. He wanted the job so badly, ran hard for it, and barely served in it. And it's sad. I have no idea. I have no insight into the Sanders administration as to whom might get that appointment to what will be a constitutional office with with a great deal of the term to serve.
Yeah, well, thoughts and prayers with the family of Mark Lowry. I know this is a difficult time for them. Let's turn to some of the other developments in politics this past week. On Saturday, we get a ruling from federal Judge Brooks up in Fayetteville that the Act 372, the library restriction law, basically this process for taking books off of shelves, putting them in different places in the library, if even allowing them to be seen to begin with, it's a preliminary injunction. He says it looks to him to violate freedom of speech, the First Amendment here. What's your take on the judge's ruling? You've had a chance to read through some of it and read through some of the reporting on it.
Among his in his narrative, the judge said he found the wording vague and unclear, and he speculated that the legislature was in a hurry to pass something, parenthesis, anything, on the library issue. And I think he nailed it. And I think that is sort of a microcosm of what this legislature has done, what it's noted for. It comes to Little Rock after, in this case, Dan Sullivan of Jonesboro, rising up in defense of certain of his constituents at home in opposition to libraries and the availability of certain materials or books for minors. He vows to go to Little Rock to do something about it. His colleagues, overwhelmingly Republican and conservative, want to oblige him, and they throw together a bill. They keep throwing in amendments when somebody has a problem, and they come up with a bill that they declare a law and that they declare, a victory for the Lord against heathen librarians, basically. And then it turns out that it's sloppy, it's unclear, and that was largely the foundation for the judge's ruling. Like, if you put all these documents that you think may be objectionable or inappropriate for kids into a separate room, are you denying a free expression, free right to read by an adult because of concern about a child? And how are librarians to know? And it's kind of important that they know, isn't it? Because you also put a provision over here that they can go to jail. If somebody gets a book that the local politicians, the city council, or the school board decides they shouldn't have gotten, there's a provision for putting librarians in jail. And the judge was just saying, whoa, this at the very least, I enjoin this this law from going into effect on Tuesday, 1st of August, and he also signaled pretty clearly. We're going to go through the motions, but right now the heavy betting favorite is I'm going to throw it out permanently. That it's just too filled. The issue aside as to what young children should see in parental responsibility, this thing is kind of a mess. So that's where it is. And, the state's not having a great deal of luck with some of its more conservative legislation. This one's got a TRO. The LEARNS Act has an emergency clause issue as a TRO. The transgender ban on transgender treatment for youth from the last session has been declared unconstitutional at the local federal court level. So sometimes it's hard to square your political aims with Constitution as interpreted by judges. But on the other hand, I will say this, I think it's something to say. The three cases I just mentioned, one is a Pulaski County judge, and legislators often see them as a liberal. The other two, I think, are Obama-era nominees, Moody on one and the judge in Northwest Arkansas on the other. And that fuels the resentment in some of your right-wing circles that these liberal judges are throwing out what they want to do. That aside, it's not going into effect next week, and it's kind of a mess, and the judge said so. So that's where that is.
I have advocated that on some of these laws that get passed in hasty fashion, like what we're talking about here, that when they are declared unconstitutional, that the legal fees ought to be extracted from the legislators that voted for them, knowing that there would be constitutional problems with them. I think that would put an end to quite a few of the bills that have some of these constitutional challenges to them there. I don't know how to get that passed, but anyhow.
No, and I don't even know if you should when you get right down to it. But it's a rhetorical point that's well taken. I'll put it that way.
Thank you. All right. You mentioned the opposition to the LEARNS Act. There is a group out there called CAPES. They are collecting signatures for a Monday deadline. They seem confident that they will get there, at least enough to get a cure period to go out and collect more signatures. I think there's a little bit of debate as to what might cause the law to pause. Is it when they turn in the signatures and are, told they have more than 54,000, or is it after they're verified? I think that's going to be an issue of debate here. What's your take on this really last-minute effort to push themselves across the finish line? It looked like a daunting task. It still may be, but they've made a go of it.
Yeah, it's like a rally at the end of a sports contest. They were just rocking along, not rocking along, they were plodding along. They got a late start. They're hamstrung by the new rules on how many counties you have to get signatures from. On top of that, Tim Griffin, the Attorney General, who's newly authorized by the legislature to pass judgment on the ballot title, he rejected them 2 or 3 times, cost them time. It all got gummed up in what is our time period with this simultaneous lawsuit about the emergency clause. But then we began seeing signs. People were actually setting up drive-through stations at farmers market sites and at courthouse squares. And there was anecdotal evidence that at the farmers market in Presbyterian Church up in the Heights that there were lines out into the street. And anecdotal evidence is good, but it's not final. So it looks, and there was news releases from the group, CAPES. We're having exponential increases daily in signatures. As I pointed out in the column, exponential increases are easier when you start with a very low number. And yesterday, I think they said they were up over 40,000 raw numbers, and they need, 54 actual legitimate signatures?
Correct.
That tells me they got to have a big Sunday, and they won't make it. But I might be wrong. Who knows? You can drive. I've liked the setup, basically. This idea that we set up, we announce where we are, and you can drive through and not get out of your air-conditioned car or SUV and sign this thing. So, the loyal opposition got in gear and is doing what loyal oppositions ought to do. And I had an ode to the loyal opposition concept in my Sunday column, and we'll see if they get there. At the least, if they get there, I think there'll be a cure period. And yeah, you're right. How is all this going to work mechanically? I think we ought to worry about that when first we see how many names they turn in, because it's going to we might get litigation over that. If there's a cure period for verifying the signatures, is the law in effect in that period? I just don't know. And it's something else we can have a judge decide, I guess.
And we've had lawsuits over just the signatures themselves, even qualifying for a cure period. So, there's a lot of hurdles.
There's a lot that's going to have to unpack if they get the numbers.
You mentioned too the lawsuit that is pending at the Arkansas Supreme Court right now that is over the emergency clause and the way that the legislature passed the Learns Act, not to mention several other laws. At this point, if you look at it, the Learns Act should go into effect on August 1st. And the brief schedule suggests that the Supreme Court's not even going to receive briefs until about mid-August on some of this. So this really becomes a case about the emergency clause in general, in theory, for precedent setting purposes at this point. Do you agree with that?
Pretty much, even though I had a lawyer on the side of the suit say that there is a series of things that could happen by which the Supreme Court would affirm local judge Wright about the emergency clause that would, and if that combines with the signatures, if they should, and those are two big ifs, it could be 2 years before, at the earliest, before Learns, if it ever gets put into effect. There is a scenario by which that happens. But I think you're probably right in that the greater fight is, or the greater issue now is, well, is everything that the legislature has passed over these years not legitimately passed, and were laws and were actions taken during these periods when emergency clauses were voted in but aren't valid, that could be suspect? That might some gadfly lawyer wanting to make trouble couldn't make trouble about something? I don't see specifically how that happens, but that seems to be what the Attorney General's office is worried about. That's what they're emphasizing, or at least that's what the press coverage emphasized about their appeal. Like, this will create chaos and bedlam in state government for all the emergency clauses that have been passed. Perhaps an overstatement, but it's where they're going, and it would mean that. It would mean that if they affirm Judge Wright's ruling that the emergency clause was not properly passed in the fashion that it was, that would apply to other things too. Whether there's some retroactive grievance that could be aired in litigation or some inconvenience for state government, I don't have that scenario in my mind, but it's what the Attorney General is invoking. So yeah.
I don't have a specific scenario in mind either, but I would say illegal exaction lawsuits might be one of the things that could definitely come from where that ruling comes down.
Yeah, right.
All right, lastly, former President Donald Trump indicted again. His lead grows in the polls, much to the chagrin of Ron DeSantis, Tim Scott, our former Governor Asa Hutchinson. It's really a debate over persecution versus prosecution in politics at this point, isn't it?
I guess it's a debate over that, even though debate is not the word I would choose. It is a disagreement. It is a difference in, I guess, honestly held views. Because and it's not just the extreme Trump base that is rallying for him. His numbers suggest that sensible, thoughtful Republican conservatives are seeing him, one, as the man deserving of their support, as the one they want to run against Joe Biden, and they are dismissing all of these indictments as a form of persecution, piling on, or something overstated, or something they mitigate in their minds because they still think maybe the Democrats steal votes in urban areas or something, so I just, yesterday morning, I watched one of the news shows, and the panel caught itself almost saying Trump's going to get the nomination, and this is going to be a close race, convicted or not, sentenced or not. So this is a hell of a thing, and there's the thought. The only contrary thought is this field will winnow, get down to a two-person race, and Trump and somebody, and the dynamic conceivably changes. That's the. Speaking of chaos and bedlam, we may be headed for that in terms of electing our next president.
So politics at the state level, chaos and bedlam. Politics at the national level, chaos and bedlam. What will you write about in the future?
I'm going to be writing about chaos and bedlam, part 1 through 50 for my next 50 columns. But all is calm and happy here, in the air-conditioned home amid this heat wave, right? We're doing great.
We'll get the Razorback football team rolling as well. You'll have even a third leg of a stool to write about in chaos and bedlam. How about that?
We need football season to come on. Yeah, we do. Yeah.
All right. He's John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Always good to get your take. Thank you for spending time with us.
It's always my pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.